Hello, my name is Joey Mora, and this is my journal entry slideshow. Going over chapter one, just introducing the purpose of research and its relevance to criminal justice. As we know, research is very important for everything that humans do to understand ourselves and to further understand the causes of our actions. As such, just in this first chapter, it goes over the basics of conducting a research project, how that research should be broken down from its design and its proposal, going through the steps of what a research project looks like as far as its chapters, um, and also addressing the main sources of information that should be used or that can be used, and possible errors that are made in the first steps of human inquiry. Moving on to chapter two, this goes over the ethics of human study, and once again, this can be broken down as the most significant focuses. As far as the ethics are of conducting an accurate and presentable research project would be the logic and observation. When we're conducting research, it's necessary that we remove our own bias before we step into anything, and so therefore we need to remove our emotions, and logic and observation and focusing on those two aspects are the most important parts. Um, Logic can be broken down into its two key components of inductive versus deductive reasoning. Inductive would be using smaller samples, such as specific instances or specific populations. And observation would be broken into using larger concepts to observe information or observe data as it is presented to us from the role of a researcher. Um, Now these are broken into for observation. This is broken into the two main variables of independent and dependent variables. Um, Now we can control certain variables such as dependent variables, but independent variables are the ones that we have no control over. Um, Actually, I'm so sorry. Flip that. Independent variables are the ones that we are in control of, what we set on our study, and dependent variables would be those that the participants act on and respond to the independent variable. Chapter three, when we're looking at research ethics, so how we approach our participants, how we treat our participants. The main emphasis is going to be on respect. Uh, this goes with respecting institutional review boards, how we approach them, and how we go about starting our study. That's going to be the main precedent and the main importance that we just be following the rules of those that go before us and those that are in control and act in a way that is ethical and rule abiding. And following that, it's even more important that we uh, address our participants in a way that is of respect, using discretion with their information, following up with them to make sure that they are aware of everything that's happening, that they can see and attest to the information that is being published, and also making sure that they are informed of everything that they will be published in, the purpose of the study that they're in, and that we are helping them to stay within the means that they would like to. Furthermore, going off of this respect, protected groups like juveniles are important to be mindful of, so that we are not stepping on any toes or acting in a way that is inappropriate, considering our own the way we conduct our study. Going on to chapter four, these are some common problems that can occur when we talk about um, validity and reliability of our information. As we conduct our study, one of the most important aspects of our study is the reliability and the validity of our study. There are three kinds of validity. There's external, internal, and statistical conclusion validity. Um, these are all based on how their validity is founded. Internal validity would be based on information that's found in the study. External would be validity that's based on what's outside the study. and statistical conclusion validity is validity that can be based on the logical conclusion caused by statistics. How a study is conducted can cause issues with its analysis. When we look at cross-sectional studies that are only focused on one point in time, this can cause a different level of validity and or reliability as it focuses on such a specific point in time, whereas longitudinal would be more reliable, yet its information might be a little bit less accurate, just because it follows a trend. And furthermore, when we look at retrospective versus prospective studies, when we look forward with how things occur after an event versus when we look backwards on the factors that lead up to an event, those can affect our validity and our reliability. Chapters 5 and 6 are relatively shorter. Chapter 5 mainly focuses on the steps that we take when conducting a study, when we bring our concepts of like our research question, how we build our research question, and how we develop it into being something that can be measured in the real world. How we get our data, our nominal, our ordinal, our numerical data, and our integral data. Furthermore, Chapter 6 talks about sources of information that we can get from the federal government, such as NIBRS, the UCR, and self-report data. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 are going to just go off the basics of experimental design and sampling. When we go look at experimental designs, we can look at blind studies, the way that we address a sample, and how we build our experimental study. When we look at sampling, it's important that we remain unbiased in the way we select our sample. Chapter 9 just goes over the appropriate wording for research questions, the procedures. So questions when conducting a study should be easy for our participants to understand, and while they may have to be wordy so that the question and the answer that we desire is might become a little bit wordy in seeking clarity, it's important that we try to remain as concise as possible, yet also clear as possible, so that we aren't getting faulty data by confusing our participants. And furthermore, following up, making sure that they're aware of everything that's happening with their data, and also following up with them so we can require more data from them is also important, as it can affect the reliability and the validity of our study. Chapter 11 and 12, the final chapters, just address the methodology of field research. There are two main methods: questions and indirectly observing data for field research. These are both primary sources, and it's important that in these ways we maintain our own role. There are a few roles that we can pick from, as solely an observer, observer as a participant as an observer, or a participant in our own study. This can affect our data, as it can affect our sample. When we are just a participant, we can't observe other participants. When we are an observer as a participant, the other participants are aware and may act differently. When we are a participant as an observer, it limits the amount of data we can get, and when we're an observer, it limits our perspective on what the participants are going through. Chapter 12 simply goes into detail for appropriate areas of study for government agencies, just talking about the reliability and the necessity for the government to be reliable in its data collection. For the studies that we read in the book, I found that the research was qualitative when it was based on information and asking police officers why they're stopping cars, we can see that would be a qualitative, since it doesn't necessarily ask police how many they're pulling over. It simply asks them why. That is something that can't be found in numbers, but must be found with words. Research was conducted cross-sectionally as well as longitudinally. I said this because when we look at the period of time as seen in this graph here, oops, let me go back. It won't let me go back. But when we look at the information based on the amount of time that it was spent, it was a very short period of time. However, they were pulling on data that had been addressed over a longer period of time. Now, this information was not retrospective nor prospective, as it only focused on the instance that it was occurring in. When looking at possible issues that could occur for these studies, because research were only observers, they could not focus, or they could not see the perspective of the police as well. Now, they were sitting in the cars with them, but because this was conducted by civilians, it does not follow the perspective of police officers in their daily lives and the things that they encounter. While we can acquire this information through interview, it does not create the same bias as police officers might have, and it does not account for their errors. Another issue that could occur is the scope of the sample. Most of these samples were drawn from only northeastern America, so this affects the way that not only police are viewed, but also population sizes and the cultural climate of that area can also have an effect on this study, and perspectives in that area. When we look at discretion, I find that discretion is something that's extremely important. I liked in chapter 2 when we talked about the necessity for discretion when we were talking about police officers and the way they handle themselves in their cars, simply for their protection, especially with the political climate that was increasing, or that was getting a little bit hotter in 2020 around police, and that is still relatively touchy. I think it's important that we protect people's information and that we remain respectful. There are instances where information should be released for protection. I think that this is a matter of utilitarianism, that we protect we do the most good for the most amount of people. So in instances where there are a lot of people in danger, yes, we need to release that information. But when there aren't people that are in danger, we need to protect those that could actually face real harm, and that's what makes this a case-by-case situation. Thank you for listening. God bless.